Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. It's a very happy Tuesday in Buffalo after the Bills, for the second time in 2 weeks, were on national TV and opened a can of whoop ass on a good team. But we'll discuss that in a minute. I'm sure Russ will start with something either baseball related or football related. Go ahead, Russ.
No, it'll be baseball. We're kind of in a different era of baseball now. Baseball is definitely changing. Good example last night. Max Scherzer had a perfect game going for 6 innings, and they took him out. Like he had an injury for the last week or two, an oblique, nothing major, but they clinched the playoffs. They don't want to risk it. In the old days, certainly the pitcher would have gone for the perfect game, even though. But now they don't. I wrote about Jacob deGrom for Full Press, and even though he may not be pitching 30 starts the last 2 years, what he has been doing is an assault on the statistical records of pitchers and going back to like the 1900s. But the most impressive one that I had pointed out was with his whip is the last 2 years, his numbers are like record setting. Like he had a 0.55 in 2021 before he got hurt, and he's got a 0.61 this year. Now, if he threw over 200 innings, Pedro's full season whip was like 0.73, something like that. I feel like deGrom can do that. But I also looked up what his whip is all time, and Addy Joss has the lowest. It's at a 0.96, and deGrom is at a 0.99. So I would say, hey, normally, statistically, there's no way deGrom's going to catch him because he's going to add on years and everything else. But pitching at this rate, he may pass him and get past him. And to me, that just shows the way the game has changed. Even wins aren't as important as they once were, and they're probably not going to be important when pitchers get contracts anymore either.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Addy Joss was a pitcher in the first and second decade of the 20th century. He died in 1911. I can't remember what it was. It may have been like diphtheria or something. It was something like rare. And he died like in the middle of his career. He was only 31. And he was the reason for the first All-Star game because they raised money, like Ty Cobb and Walter Johnson and all these guys got together to raise money for his widow because they were making $3,000 a year back then, and but no, I mean right now deGrom's accomplishments are incredible, and to the thing with Scherzer, Kershaw, I think his first start of the year was pitching a perfect game through 6, and they pulled him. It doesn't matter to these, like they don't want the Johan Santana repeat, Russ. Right. They don't want the guy blowing his arm out. That's why, hey, you might not see unless a pitcher throws a perfect game or a no hitter.
In 100 pitches,
in the 85 pitches, if they at the most they push to 110 or 115, and after that they don't care. They just
they don't. One other thing though, deGrom also had, even though he had a no decision and eventually the Mets won the game, his last start, he had 40 consecutive starts with 3 runs or less. That broke another record, and I think that was like Kid Nichols. And it's funny because I looked up Kid Nichols, and the amazing thing about him was, after like 4 years, I think he actually threw like the 4th perfect game ever in the history of the game. So there was that. But after like 4 years, he completely ruined his arm as a righty, and he threw lefty. Like he pitched lefty. Really, it's just, I love some of those old stories. They're kind of incredible. But I don't think anybody would risk doing that or not risk, would try to do that now, just to simply throw a different hand. I mean, the Mets did have a pitcher that was a righty-lefty guy, and there have been a few, but this guy changed everything.
Greg Harris was the last one.
Greg Harris was the guy.
Yeah, that was the last one I could remember.
Did you know that about Kid Nichols, that he actually –
I did not.
Yeah, I didn't either. I was like, wow.
Yeah, with so many ambidextrous people out there, you would think that there would be some. I mean, can I imagine? You can now. I don't know if they can switch in the middle of the inning. They'd have to switch gloves.
You can switch in the middle of an inning. You could switch in the middle of a batter, but you can't do it after there's 2 strikes.
I see. No, that okay.
Because I've seen Harris do that.
Just one note here before we start. We got a lot of news today. And we'll end the show probably around 1:45. Like I said, the Bills game last night against Tennessee. First of all, ESPN and ABC, please, for the love of God, with these double headers. I mean, you have overlapping games. It's really stupid. So the first half was over, and it was the middle of the second quarter. If you're going to overlap games, then have it like 2 hours apart, not an hour apart.
Yeah, it didn't seem smart. I agree.
And the split screen, please. I mean, choose one game. Tell everybody the other game's on ABC. That's fine. But this split screen where they had Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Bills and Tennessee on, like the people who are on ESPN want to watch the Bills game. The people on ABC want to watch the Philadelphia game. Keep it that way. I understand cross plugging, but
But they sanitized the Bills fans because they didn't show one Bills fan lighting themselves on fire or jumping onto a lit table. All they showed was a guy covering himself in condiments.
God, it was so,
which that had to be your nightmare.
So gross. I mean, friggin' disgusting. I was like,
before the game, you've let everybody cover you with ketchup and mustard, and how do you go into the game like that?
That's truly somebody who's at a low ebb of IQ. He's at the level of a Jets fan. Oh, just kidding. But no, the thing that I do appreciate out of ESPN, not one picture of Niagara Falls. Thank you.
Hey, there you go.
So you did, even a broken clock is right twice a day, and ESPN was right yesterday. All right. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We'll save the big news until Eck joins us in a few minutes. We'll talk about the retirements, and we'll start with the least of the three. And this isn't insulting to him, but of the three players that did retire today, I think the one who made the least impact, and that's not saying he wasn't a good player because he was, but was Keith Yandle. He announced his retirement. Russ you got a chance to see him all last year with the Flyers, and was clearly at the point where there wasn't much left in the tank.
No, I mean, if they didn't make this handshake agreement that he could break the record there, he'd have been benched during the year. And that's just the way it is. It's not like I don't like Keith Yandle. I mean, Keith Yandle was a hell of a player.
Yes.
Really high point offensive defenseman, really good guy. We all know that. But his time had come, and, they let him set the record, so that's fine. And it's a hell of a record. And in the game of hockey, to be able to do that, to show up for all that, is a big deal. So, great career for him. It was not a shock to any of us or anybody in Philly. That's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, he had a number of good years with Arizona. He went to the Rangers, less so in Florida. Florida buys him out. He goes to Philadelphia. I mean, in his day he was like one of those, I would refer to him like as offensemen.
Yeah.
He wasn't, he was a rover like a Brent Burns or a Sergei Gonchar who, defense was not his forte. It was pushing the play. It was engaging in the offense. It was quarterback and power play. And he was very good at power play. So, I mean, good career. Don't think he's a Hall of Famer, but a very good career. The next is PK Subban, Norris Trophy winner in 2012-13. Long career. Montreal was part of the big Shea Weber deal in 2015, I believe it was. Then, got to the Stanley Cup final with Nashville, then was traded to New Jersey and was out there as a free agent. And Russ, it is my suspicion. I know that I think Ack reported that he thought that the Rangers may have offered him a PTO. There were probably some other teams that were offering him PTOs, but I think he wanted a contract, and I don't think he was going to get one, and that's why he retired today.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I had been saying on the show, I just felt like it was his time, and it doesn't matter his age. I know he's a young man. When it's time, it's time. You never know when that's going to be, and he played hard minutes. He played a lot of games. He, always played up in the top pairing or a second pairing, and that wears you down. I mean, it's not easy to do. I see it wearing down other really good defensemen in this league. So, I'm sure there were some limitations as to what he was willing to do or not willing to do. I also think it was probably like a big shock to him when a couple of years ago, if you remember, he was talking about his off-season training and best shape of his life. We've heard that a lot of times from athletes, but they sometimes do believe it when they come in and then realize it really wasn't the case. And so, yeah, we all expect him to join a network. He'll probably join a network. The one thing I could say is he really could command the locker room, and that worked with him, and it worked for him, and it worked against him. There were some players that definitely were jealous of him. No question about it. I never had a problem with him. I never thought he was divisive on a team. I always thought he was positive. I always thought he said the right things, but also if he was going to speak his mind, he had a good reason for it. But I know that not all of his teammates always stuck up for him, and I kind of felt bad about that in Montreal. But that's Montreal. It gets kind of catty there.
Yeah, well, Montreal is Montreal's Montreal. That's all. I'm not going to say anything
when Mike's time is done at the mic, he'll know.
Yeah, which we never. But yeah, 13-year career. Yeah, 13-year career. The year we won the Norris, he had 38 points in 42 games. It was a half season, but had really good years from 2012 to 2018. So that's 7 years. But then really dropped off 31, 18, 19, and 22 points his last 4 years. We all observed last year that he was slowing down to the point that his main weapon was the slew foot.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was time.
I mean, his nickname was Sluban. Like that wasn't, we didn't even give it to him.
PK Sluban. So yeah, I thought there was a chance he would lock on with a team, but honestly, I think he was probably looking for a 1-year contract with a good team that he could at a minimum salary that he could have one last kick at the can, because he only had one chance at the Stanley Cup final with Nashville, and clearly it wasn't out there. So, and yeah, like everybody's saying in the chat, I think he's going into broadcasting. It could be Sportsnet. He did some work with Sportsnet a few years ago. I think he did some work last year with ESPN.
He did. Look, I mean, if I'm the Devils, I offer him something with the team that way right now. I mean,
I think that's too small for him. I think
I don't know. I mean, you have to break in somewhere, right? I don't think he's ready necessarily to take on Hockey Night in Canada. Like that.
No. But he was pretty good and pretty smooth with Sportsnet. Yeah. So I think he had national exposure, and I do think like ESPN, TNT, or Sportsnet. Will go, especially Sportsnet, because I think they need more. They've got a few really good people on their broadcast, but I think they need a couple more.
I mean, I'd replace Subban over Mark Messier. I would do that tomorrow.
He's got more hair. Okay.
I don't care about the hair, Mike, obviously.
But I have more hair than Mark Messier. There you go. Does that matter? No.
It's not by much, but yes.
Not by much. Sorry. The other one, the big one, was Zdeno Chara, and we could see this one coming because there was not any. I mean, I thought the possibility, there was talk out there of, the Bruins had a name that they were going to extend a PTO to, and I thought it could be Chara, but the Bruins didn't want to go that direction. And I'm putting that together because the Bruins are really shorthanded on the blue line. But, Zdeno Chara, clearly in my mind, a Hall of Fame career, wins a cup in Boston in 2011. It plays to the age of 45. Starts with the Islanders, Ottawa, the Bruins, Washington, and back to the Islanders for a year. Fantastic career, Russ. I mean, impactful. Early in his career, he overcomes the impression that he was too slow. He improved his skating vastly.
His skating was bad. Like people told me in the AHL that watched him every day, it was legitimately bad.
Right, and that's why the Islanders included him in the deal. That it was him and a number one pick for Alexei Yashin, and the number one pick turned out to be Jason Spezza. So that deal turned out to be fantastic for the Ottawa Senators.
Listen, if Mike Milbury made a deal, chances are it was better for the other team.
Right.
Like, it's just odds are.
He really had a fun time there, didn't he?
Yeah, but we're just
that was the case. Yeah, we're talking about
Chara.
Chara.
We already mentioned Gandil and Subban. So if you have anything,
If you want to add on those first, do that.
Yeah. Sorry, we have a dog here that doesn't want to go in or out. So if you hear the little barking, he's like one of these dogs that just for some reason will not leave and will not stay. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, on Chara, I'm doing to start with Chara for a second because my favorite story with Chara was, and this is how old he is and this is how old I am, is seeing him play his first preseason game ever as an Islander in the Spectrum against the Flyers, a building that doesn't exist anymore. And I was sitting like 4 rows up from the ice and just a fan and just amazed at how ridiculous this guy looked on the ice and how, when I was talking to my friends who are with me, I'm like, there's a guy who will never make it in the league. He can't skate. He's like a wounded giraffe out there. I kept saying he was just like, he looked terrible, absolutely awful in that game. It was his first game, granted, a young kid and everything but so big and just unable to handle his size and what was going on, with him. So,
well, the transition, I love this. He played for Prince George in the WHL in juniors. His first professional team was the Kentucky Thoroughblades.
Yeah. I think Nick Fotia was his coach, actually.
Yeah. So then in 4 years with the Islanders, and I remember him playing against I remember him as an Islander playing against Toronto and the Sabres. Uh-huh. He was the last 2 years, he was a minus 27 each year. And the transformation, he goes from the Islanders to Ottawa, and he goes from a minus 27 to a plus 30. It was a 57 plus between 1 year to the next. So it was a transformation when he went to Ottawa.
The one thing I don't know if he was kidding with me about or not was at one of the All-Star games, I asked him about his family. I said, "Are you the tallest one in his family, in your family?" And he said, "No." But we honestly don't know a lot about Zdeno Chara's family. That's the funny thing about it is, even if you try and search online now, you don't get a lot of information. He sort of kind of kept it to himself. Looking at his point totals is interesting because while he did have a great shot, you really wanted him out there more for his defense and his physicality. And once in a while, he would score your points. He had some 50-point seasons, which you think about it, that's nothing to sneeze at. But you needed him more for the other stuff than you actually did for the points. But he really gave it all. And that's why I said he was like a generational guy because he could be used as an offensive defenseman. He could be used as a defensive defenseman. He kind of was doing both all the time, but really more like a physical two-way guy, not just a guy who says they're two-way. Right. Just a lot of people didn't want to take him on. Like they would just not go on his side.
Players hated him, and you also remember that it needs to be noted that that his departure from Ottawa came basically with the Senators deciding to go with Wade Redden over him.
Yes,
right. And Peter Chiarelli was taking over as the Bruins GM at the time. Now, I believe Gordon was still the GM when he became a free agent and signed him, but everybody thought there's something going on here because Chiarelli was going from Ottawa to Boston, and Chara just happened to sign in Boston.
Yeah, so but they really, they couldn't sign both of them, the Senators at the time.
And they wouldn't have won a cup without him.
Right, they wouldn't. Yeah, and then Boston doesn't win a cup without them. So it's like, but the Senators, they have both of them, and they can't get both Redden. And then, of course, Redden, goes backwards quickly, And
but Ottawa made the
really
cup
backwards in New York.
Yeah, Ottawa made the cup the year after Chara left, so it wasn't an immediate thing. But I'll say this: he had a monster shot from the point. Nobody wanted to get in front of it. And then later in his career, Russ, and he didn't have the greatest hands in the world. Like on 6-on-5 late in the game or during power plays, he would go to the front of the net, and good luck trying to move that mountain.
I know, that's what I'm saying. He really was a force of nature, even different than like a Chris Pronger, because he was even stronger than Pronger.
Yeah, not for sure.
And so, you don't see a lot of guys like him. Everybody wants to have a guy like him. Everybody tries to get, 6'7" to 6'9" player and hope that they do something like Chara, even if they're not a defenseman. But there's only one. And it's just he'll make the Hall of Fame. He's done everything he needs to do. He
Yeah.
signed his one-day contracts, which I hate, but he did it in Boston. So that was the big tease. It wasn't going to be Subban on a PTO. It was Chara on a final contract.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, talking Subban for a second as well. So I was told from a very good source that the only team that offered him a PTO was the Rangers, which is interesting. Because of the hatred the Rangers had and just the absolute, the epic battles they had against the Rangers.
Yeah.
But they liked him enough that they thought about, I guess
it's a free swing. It's like, okay, offer him a PTO and whatever, but
yeah,
we were talking about this. Russ and I were talking about this in relation to the deal that was made yesterday, which was the Nils Lundkvist deal,
right.
To Dallas for first and a fourth round, conditional first and a fourth round pick. There is a slot there if you look at it, because Russ, it's Fox, Trouba, Lindgren, Schneider, and Keandre Miller.
Right.
The number 6. They could be looking for a veteran number 6,
or Zach Jones. It'll be one or the other.
Zach Jones. It's possible, but I don't think it's gonna be Jared Tenorti. But they brought Matt Bartkowski in as somebody as a PTO, but Subban might have been a good fit there. I think he and I have nothing other than just my reading of the situation.
Yeah.
I would think he wanted a 1-year contract and nobody was offering him anything more than a PTO.
Yeah, I think that's true.
He wanted a guarantee contract and there was none. I think I told you guys I would need to see him, and personally I wouldn't have even given him a PTO, and it's no slight to him. It's just based off of what I saw last year. I had seen enough, just like with what I saw from Keith Yandel last year. Yeah.
I had seen enough.
Yeah,
I would never have said that about Chara, simply because if Chara wants to come in and play 10 minutes a game, he'll do something. But he was not the same either. Even in Washington, he was good for a little while there, and then that went south. So
It's just about that.
The way it goes. To mention the Rangers real quick with the Nils Lundkvist deal.
Let's talk about that.
I know it's always fun for Ranger fans to say we won the deal. Look at these draft picks we got and everything else. Lundkvist is a 22-year-old right-handed defenseman who's smart. He's not a big offensive defenseman, although 51% of his shots do hit the net, which he just scored a little less the last 2 years. He's not a big offensive guy, but he can transport the puck, and he's smart, and he's right-handed, and he knows how to play defense, and he's 22. And I think Dallas did the right thing here, because if they're going to bring him in and bring him along slowly, they probably could do that. And I think just with the Rangers, A, it was a numbers game, and I think B, Gallant didn't like him, and I think eventually Drury didn't like him as a result. But if Lundkvist makes it as a Dallas Star and plays even as a third-pairing guy for like the next 5 years, the Rangers better nail that first-round pick. Otherwise, it's still not going to look great. That's why I won't say anybody won the deal right now.
Yeah, it is. It's too soon to say.
Well, I'll just, and we're going to talk about Dallas today for our preview. Their defense, they added Colin Miller in the offseason, but Heiskanen, Lindell, Ryan Suter, Hakanpää, really Lundkvist fits in with like Thomas Harley, who's a former first-round pick. So there's good depth there. There's good veteran experience there. He's not going to be overexposed. He's not going to play a ton of minutes. So I think it was a good ad for Dallas. A good, because it's a top 10 protected first-round pick. Now the Rangers, Drury could simply turn around and trade this first-round pick someplace else at the deadline and get something good for it. So you could see immediate results in terms of what they get with it. But if they keep that pick, then 2 or 3 years down the road, you're going to have to determine whether this deal was good, because Lundkvist will be 25 and this pick will be 21, and you'll have a better idea of what they had.
It is really nice to have a first-round draft pick, an extra first-round draft pick going in the trade deadline. There's no question about that, especially if you're a team that's in contention like the Rangers will be. So,
yeah, but again, like the Rangers may feel like, hey, we're good at D right now, and my feeling is you can never have enough.
Yeah, that's why I think there's whoever is out there. If there's somebody on the, there's got to be somebody better than Matt Bartkowski. But
I think Bartkowski, to be honest, Gordon had invited him in when he was there, He's a former Bruin. I think they're just doing him a favor.
Right. So, I mean, I would think that they're looking for a number 6 out there, and there might be guys who are unsigned out there that might be a good fit for the Rangers as a cheap option as a sixth.
There are definitely defensemen out there. Like PTO. Because some guys are doing PTOs other places. Even we could see something give with the Rangers. Just PTOs are what they are. I mean, as we've said before, they're not anything. They're just a guy to get a guy in there, and sometimes teams see a guy playing and sign him. I remember when Bill Guerin signed a PTO with the Flyers and got signed by another team. I don't know if you were there with that game, Russ, but it was kind of crazy.
Yes, actually, I do remember that.
He got signed in the middle of the game, like in the
middle of the game. Yeah,
come out for the third period of a preseason game, and then we saw him downstairs. He's like, "Yeah, I signed. I forget who. I guess I'm not sure who it was with. Pittsburgh, maybe."
Maybe Pittsburgh.
I think it was Pittsburgh. Yeah, I think that was the Pittsburgh signing.
I mean, hey, what about former Ranger Anton Strawman, Russ?
Yeah, that's something. I want to say
he's not on
a PTO. I guess the Rangers just signed Pionk as a free agent, but he was a guy they got out of nowhere. That does happen. Mm-hmm. There was, I remember. I can go even further back. The Rangers signed R.J. Umberger to a PTO, and then he ended up signing with the Flyers instead.
Right. That's right.
Oh, no, maybe the Canucks. Maybe the Canucks before the Flyers.
Or I forget who. And I remember one time the Flyers had Brian Berard in on a PTO. He signed someplace else.
He was in Boston, and then he signed someplace else.
Yeah, I forget where
or he was someplace else and he signed with Boston. It was one or the other. I know that
he was definitely in Philly on a PTO playing in preseason, and I remember him leaving.
Yeah. No, it was the Flyers. That's right, because it was the Canucks that drafted RJ. That's what it was getting me confused.
Yeah. That's right.
Right. Yeah.
So Ak, we held our fire here when it came to the big news because I think everybody knew after they won the cup, he's got a year left in his contract, Nathan McKinnon was going to get paid. It was just a question of how, and I think everybody knew that he was going to make more than McDavid, and he does. It's 12.6, and if you look at the details on the deal, Puckpedia posted them. Over 15 million in signing bonus the first 3 years of this deal. Then the last 4 years, I think, is now almost 10. So it's a heavy signing bonus, and he deserves it. He's a fantastic player. He won them a cup. Does this raise the price of poker? Yeah, and I think like I said on Twitter, mark my words. Next June, Austin Matthews will be the highest paid player in the NHL if he signs an extension with Toronto. And I think he will, but he will set the mark. I will bet you his contract will be at least 13, maybe even more on an 8-year deal if he signs an extension.
Yeah, listen to this list that Hockey Reference has him on for through 9 years. They basically go from to players that he's similar to, and he turns out he's like right in the middle of this. Paul Correa, Bobby Hull, Steven Stamkos, Danny Heatley, Jamie Benn, because Ben was good early on, Datsuk, Dion, Yzerman, Thornton, and then somebody I've never heard of, Cy Denny. So that's a pretty good list.
That's a really good list.
He's a fantastic player. He deserves to get paid, and I don't think anybody would have any complaint about this because I think he took a deal in the last year of his ELC, coming off a bad year, and for the last, I would say 4 or 5 years, it's been the best bang for the buck contract in the NHL. Oh, yeah. He deserved to get paid,
and he never at once complained, and he worked his tail off all the time, and he just never, it wasn't about his contract ever. You never heard
played 82 games twice.
Yeah, you never heard McKinnon say boo about the fact he had such a reasonable contract. So you knew this was coming. I had heard in the last couple of days it was going to be astronomically high, which it is. But at the same time, this is like you said, Mike. It's not going to be that much different for other players that are in that world, in that realm for him. I mean, they're all going to be in a similar spot, I think.
He's more than a point of game player. The interesting thing is, and look, he does score goals, but he is not a goal scorer by trade. But he does score goals, but he only has 5 hat tricks. I thought he would have a little more.
Yeah. I mean, I really think that the thing that people don't realize about McKinnon, and I've said this before, is that he is feistier than you realize. Like as far as these superstars go, he's very physical and very annoying. Like he really does annoy defense. Like he and Crosby is the same way. They both and being from that same area, it's funny that they both play a very similar type of game. But he definitely I always liked where his superpowers came out to me was watching him play for that North American team in the World Cup of Hockey. And when you saw when he was with Matthews and McDavid and all those other guys on the same team, he was the feisty guy. He was the feisty guy on those teams. Like he was the guy who got in people's houses. He ran goalies, not ran them, but was like in goalies' faces all the time. He definitely has that in his game. He's a lot of fun to watch. He's just a very understated guy, but really impressive.
He's one of the strongest players on his skates that I've ever seen. He's almost impossible. Yeah. Like if you're a defenseman and he's cutting in towards the goal, good luck. It's tough. It's tough.
He's like a linebacker, but he's also got that speed.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You're right.
Yeah.
What's interesting with him is his shots. He's taken 2,400 shots in his career so far. It's a lot of shots, man.
It's a lot of shots. How many years? 2,400 shots?
9.
2011 draft, wasn't he?
He's 9 years.
That's like, that's almost 300 shots.
10 years.
Almost averages like 300 shots a year, which is like, when you think about it. So even if it's like, he's averaging probably over 3 shots a game in general. Like that's.
Like McDavid's at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 7 years, McDavid has taken 1,597 shots.
Yeah.
Now, the difference is McKinnon really doesn't have a Draisaitl. He has Rantanen, and Rantanen's a really good player, but he's not Draisaitl. So McKinnon knows that he has to take more shots, even though he's not necessarily a goal scorer, just because. And I think that's the reason.
Oh, yeah, I think that's totally true. I mean, McKinnon drives the net like a lot more. Like he'll drive the net, and he'll put himself in that spot. He kind of has a little bit. I've always thought there's a little bit of Malkin and McKinnon. They're more similar than people realize. I really feel like that Malkin has got the same kind of game, and that both of those guys, if they really want to and have the puck, will get to the net, or you'll take a penalty. Like there's no getting around it. Like either you can't stop them. You really just can't. I don't think you can legally stop them from going to the net with the puck. Basically,
you could try and strip it away. That's the only thing you could do.
You can try, but they're so good at that. So it's like really at the end of the day, when they're at their best, they're drawing a lot of penalties. Like McKinnon draws a lot of penalties.
This is the thing. McDavid is under contract for 3 more years after this year. So he's under a contract until 2026. Matthews is up after next year, 23-24. So Matthews will set the mark. Will be the highest paid player in the NHL. I mean, whether it be in Toronto, which I think it will be, or someplace else.
Right.
But if that, then basically Matthews will be the highest paid player in the league for 2 years until McDavid comes up for contract. Now the question is, will Edmonton has 2 problems. One, Draisaitl comes up for contract the year before, and do you think Draisaitl is going to want to take significant? He's making $4 million less than McDavid.
No, that will change.
That will change. He'll either make in the 12s or he'll go someplace else. It'll be like a Malkin Crosby dynamic because now Malkin decided he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh and finish his career there. I mean, Draisaitl, if he wants to make 13 million, he's probably going to have to go someplace else because they can't afford to pay him and McDavid at the same time.
I'll say it like this: if Ken Holland's smart, he's gone before he has to make that decision.
Yes,
because whoever that GM is. If they have to make that decision and they're keeping McDavid and Draisaitl's going, that GM is not going to be well thought of by the fans.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that they'll. I mean, it depends how many other players. I mean, they do have a lot of money in Nurse already.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to afford it unless the cap goes up astronomically. And if they hadn't won it by then, he might want to leave anyhow.
Yeah, that is the big thing. I mean, and that's that's the same. I mean, in Toronto, you have a lot of high paid players, so it might be.
Not as many as you think. They have the core 4, and then really it drops off. I mean, you've got the 4 forwards making $40 million, and you've got Riley making $7.5, and after that it drops off significantly.
What if it comes up? There's a situation where because you said, what is it for Matthews, Mike? How many more years?
He's got this year and next year.
Right. So what if it comes up, there's a situation where Toronto has a choice because Edmonton's not winning. They are going to do something about McDavid. Would Toronto keep and extend Matthews, or would they get McDavid and pay him and give him all that money? Like
They'd have to
make that choice.
They'd have to wait 2 years for McDavid to be a free agent. That's
right. Well, or trade for him after a year. You know, by next year, if Edmonton doesn't win, they could possibly. I'm just saying, would they do that?
I can't conceive of the possibility of. And I know Edmonton traded Gretzky, and anybody can be traded. I just can't conceive of the possibility of them trading McDavid, especially to Toronto. So in that comparative,
if you could put like Nylander and a bucket of people in there and go for it for 1 year with Matthews and McDavid on the same team, if that's possible, I would do it.
Well, I mean, okay. The one thing, and this is pie in the sky stuff. The one thing is, John Tavares' contract expires the year before,
right? So it is possible they could fit it in for a short time.
And it's my personal opinion that John Tavares will finish his career in Toronto, but at the age, I think he'll be age 34 at the time that his contract expires. He's going to take either retire, which I don't think he will because he'll still be a play, or he'll take a significantly lesser salary. And if he does, then and the cap goes up, then that opens the room for. Now, do I think McDavid's going to go to Toronto to be the 1B, or he'd be the 1A and Matthews be the 1B? They're friends. I don't know if it's possible. But
what do you think, Eck? I mean, they can do it for one season for sure.
I mean, it really does depend, I think, on what Edmonton.
Or they could let McDavid become a free agent and still re-sign Matthews if they wanted to.
I mean, you're talking about two teams that have been just playoff disasters, right? So, like, either one of them could go south. Either one of them could have success. Like, both of them are on the verge of could win cups. You know, so it's like that's what the tough thing is. It's an interesting concept.
I think McDavid would want to play there, right?
I think he would definitely want to play there. And maybe, I mean, who knows? I mean, the issue is, right, that you have that 1 year where you're going to have to Matthews' new contract, Tavares and Marner under their current contracts is going to be for 1 year, and that's going to be.
Well, that's the difficult.
For 1 year, and then with the salary that McDavid's at now, which I think they could fit in for the 1 year.
But
you're going to lose Nylander.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
you're going to probably, as soon as, like, remember, Matthews has a no move clause that kicks in July 1st of next year.
Right.
They will sign him before then, because they're not going to go the way of Garth Snow and say, "Oh, we trust John Tavares to re-sign here," and then he goes someplace else. You know, then all the power goes from the Leafs to Matthews, and then Matthews could just ride out the year and go free agent if he wants to. And I think they want to get him locked up no matter what the deal is. But more than likely, if the cap doesn't go up in 24-25, they're going to need to create the room to increase the salary of Matt. Now, that might be only $3 million on top of 11.6 he's making right now, but that's a lot of money. So you might be forced to trade Nylander after you get Matthews signed. So I mean, this coming year for Toronto is going to tell everything, because after this year they only have 6 forwards signed, and right. I mean, the books are remarkably clean except for that core group. But I mean, Jonas Siegel, my colleague with The Athletic, wrote something, and Kyle Dubas's contract, this is the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
So, and I believe Sheldon Keefe has one more year after this year, because he had an extension last summer. They don't have a situation, they struggle in the middle of the year. I mean, they're not on the hook for a long term like they are with Babcock. I mean, you could, if they do struggle, you could see Dubas and Keefe. The feet are being held to the fire this year. Dubas and Keefe. If they have success, they will get long-term extensions and everybody will be happy. And if they don't have success, then you're probably going to see a new general manager in Toronto.
Right.
Well, let's talk for a minute, because I had gotten a list of which coaches might get fired first from Bet Online, and Sheldon Keefe is number one.
Yeah.
I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody.
No, and for the reason I just described. I mean,
Right.
they're in a situation where, I mean, right now they have, there's a lot of pressure on this team to produce. They, the goaltending situation we've debated long and hard, so we won't go down that road again. But I think that I think you're wrong.
Bless you.
I think you're wrong, Eck, and I know I'm right. But
so number 2 on this list is Dave Haxtell, which is interesting in the sense that you would think Dave Haxtell would get more rope as a for an expansion.
I don't buy that.
But hold on. The only thing is, we kept hearing these unrealistic expectations coming out of writers and everything else for Seattle that first year. And what if Ron Francis really sort of thinks that way? Like, would he look at Haxtell as his starter coach and say, all right, we've got to now start to, ramp it up a little bit more, and he's not the guy. Maybe that's the thinking why Haxtell's second. Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, if I was betting on this one, Eck, and if we're doing FanDuel or DraftKings, and if you want to advertise with us, please do.
They will. We're working in the middle of that. More to come soon. Stay tuned.
But the guy I would bet is, and he's a 9-1, is Lindy Ruff. I think Lindy Ruff, if they get off to a rough start, I think he's gone.
Yeah,
rough start. Good one, Mike.
Very nice.
I think he's there because of apathy. Because the Devils never do anything quickly.
Well, I mean, I was surprised by the Jack Hughes, backing of him.
He's really there because of the players. Like he is
right.
He is literally, and it is rare that we see that. This is Fitzgerald, who's a former player, trusting players on something. Like he's saying, how many times when enough players come to you who are big parts of your team. And it's not a bad gamble because here's the thing. No one expects New Jersey to win the cup, right? So at the end of the day, put this on the players. Show the players that you have their back and make them work hard to make Ruff successful. And if they don't make Ruff successful and you fire him, then the players don't have anything they can say about it.
Yeah, but there's no recourse. So then the next one's really kind of interesting with Dallas Eakins because everybody knows how I felt about Dallas Eakins before as a coach. I don't know if I would have him on the hot seat now because
what it is.
What am I expecting out of Anaheim?
He's in the final year of his contract. That's
okay.
That's why he's in. Now I thought they showed progress last year and then they fell off the planet. But
I'm trying to be fair here. Yeah.
No, I think he's done a decent job developing some of their young players. But I think they made a few additions like Klingberg in the offseason, like Ryan Strome, and if they show progress, then I think they'll probably extend them. And if they don't, if they just sort of wallow at the bottom of the Pacific Division, then they probably get rid of him. Now, Laviolette at 8-1.
I buy that one.
See, if McClellan's got a little bit of a temper, and if he's not getting results early, they do need to make the playoffs.
See, I buy that one. Yeah, they are geared to win right now. There's no question about it. And Laviolette is everyone's favorite player and everyone's favorite coach until he's everyone's least favorite coach. Like there is no transitional period from Laviolette being awesome to being terrible. Like everywhere he is, he goes like, and it's just a hard cut. So at some point, you don't know what season it's going to be. You don't know when it's going to happen, but all the players will turn on him and they'll stop playing. And that could be in November of this year, for all we know.
Yeah. Rob Brindamore, I don't think he's in any
There's
trouble.
not a print. That's ridiculous. That's
the next three, I think are they're if you're betting on these, you're wasting your money. Brindamore 10-1. Don Granato at 12-1. They love Don Granato. They're not firing him. Maybe when like the young guys are developed and they want to take the next step.
Yeah, I think there's a definite desire for some like consistency in Buffalo.
Right.
And Granato has shown that. Although I do think that he's got to show his improvement this year. At the end of the year he could be gone, but I don't see it in the beginning of the season.
And the last one that I'm going to mention, only for fun, is they have John Tortorella at 18-1. The only reason I think they do is because of what happened in Vancouver when it just didn't work. But that's the only time that's ever happened to John Tortorella.
Here's how that happens, Russ. If they fire the whole group of them, like if they were to fire Fletcher, Tortorella and everybody.
They're not going to eat 3 years of Tortorella's
I
contract.
wouldn't think so, but there is the season tickets. The tickets are so bad right now, and if
That's
they
true. I mean, that
if
could
they
be
are
a factor.
if they
but-
come out and now if they come out and they're just terrible and aren't entertaining, at least which is I think with Tortorella they will at least be entertaining. But if they're not entertaining, then yeah, I mean they'll move Fletcher, and if they bring another GM in, no GM is going to come in without being able to name his guy.
Well, the great long shot bet here is DJ Smith of Ottawa at 20-1, because if
he has pressure for the
if all the additions of Pierre Dorian don't work, the first thing he's going to do is fire DJ Smith.
That is one I would go with. I can't believe he is a longer long shot than Brindamore. That's unbelievable.
Well, I think they're thinking
the longer long shot than Torts.
This also has to do with this is obviously the fact that there aren't many people betting in Carolina, right? Like that on hockey, that and there are a lot of people betting in Toronto because Sheldon Keefe shouldn't be the favorite to get fired quickly. I mean that's absurd too. I mean that's just listen. Like I said before, I mean
Toronto's in last place but
they're not going to be. I mean,
no, I know, but I'm just saying theoretically, if they were in last place for the first 2 months, he probably does get fired.
If they have a long losing streak in the middle of the season and they're in danger of missing the playoffs, the thing is, it's not just going to be Keefe. It's going to be It's going to be
everything. You're right, but I think that here at the end of the day, like I've said before, I know that Toronto's lost the playoff in the first round, and hasn't won a playoff series in a long time, and all that stuff.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. We're aware of that, Mike. I just did some research for you before the show, but I can also say this, that I firmly believe that if they played anybody but Tampa last year in the first round of the playoffs, they would have won. And I think that they would have beaten anybody but Tampa in the Eastern Conference. And I think they could have gone to the Eastern Conference final if they didn't play Tampa in the first round.
Who are they going to play in the first round this year? Florida or Tampa?
They would have beaten Florida last year. There's no question in my mind they would have beaten Florida in the playoffs last year. They might beat Florida in the playoffs if they beat them this year. They'll definitely beat Ottawa if they beat them in the playoffs this year. There's different teams, there's different situations. So as I play this out, I think that the only team that they couldn't have beaten last year was the team they played. And I think that they would have won 2 rounds if they didn't have to face Tampa until then. So the reality is, like, this, to put this all on Keith, they were so much better last year than they were the year before. It's not even funny. So now, granted, goaltending, so we'll see what happens. But
there's a potential of the goaltending actually being better because Matt Murray has actually played well in the playoffs before.
There is a potential of the goaltending being better, but it's all a big question mark. We don't know.
Now, the one little note before we talk Dallas here, the Leafs announced, or Chris Johnston from TSN announced, that Timothy Liljegren is going to be out the entire training camp, which is going to, I think, throw a little bit of a spanner in the works on the Sandin thing. Because right now it seems that the Leafs want to sign Sandin to something close to what they signed Liljegren for, which was in the mid-1s on a short-term deal. Supposedly, Elliot Friedman reported that the talk out there is that Sandin's camp is looking for, like, in the low 2s, Adam Boquist or Jake Bean signed with Columbus. I don't think that's going to fly. So there could be a holdout, like Russ said, but I still think there's a possibility of him signing.
Oh, Russ could be right. Look at that.
Yeah. Even a broken clock is right twice a day.
If they don't go to the low 2s for Sandin, I don't understand it. I don't understand this planet.
I understand it, Ek. I think what the camp is saying is, it's nice that Liljegren got that money. I'm a lot more offensively gifted, and you've got to give me 2 years, because if you bring me in at 700 and I get 40 points for you, you're not going to pay me what I want the next year either. So that's why I'm going to make you pay it up front. And if I give you 40 points this year, it's still a bargain for next year. He's looking at their camp is looking at comparables and saying, this is what our guy can do with enough time played. That's what he's looking at.
I'm saying that the Leafs have to at least give him that. Like, to me, that's
Heck, 3 years ago,
as much as they want to say he sucks.
No. They didn't say he sucked. They said he hasn't proven it yet. 3 years ago, he had 8 points in 28 games. 2 years ago, he had 4 points in 9 games and he got injured. Last year, he had 16 points in 51 games and got injured. What they're saying is, prove it to me.
He's not just a scoring defenseman, right? Like, am I wrong about this?
He's a scoring defenseman, but he hasn't scored yet.
Yeah, but isn't he also a good two-way defenseman? Like, I think that
he's an offensive defenseman.
He's purely an offensive defenseman. Like, I don't think of him as purely an offensive defenseman.
No, he could grow into a two-way defenseman. I think he's got that ability, but he's not strong. He's knocked off the puck a lot. He's a work in progress.
I think the Leafs are going to end up paying him like $175 or $2 million a year.
That's a Sean Dursey contract. I think that's a compromise. If he's expecting to get over $2 million, he'll be playing in Sweden this year because they're not going to pay him that. They can't. They cannot do it.
What's their option? What are they going to do?
He's gonna sign. I mean,
but let's say he doesn't. Let's just say he doesn't. Like, so where are Leafs going for that extra?
Then Jordy Ben is your number 6 defenseman.
What?
Then Jordy Ben is your number 6 or 7 defenseman.
And you're okay with that? Like, that's going to be good?
No, but they can't, in their current structure, they can't pay him that amount. They can't. Now, the compromise might be a 1-year deal.
A 1 year. What's wrong with a 1-year deal?
Nothing. Maybe in the end, he gets like a 1-year deal for like $900,000. But they can't. Not
a 1-year deal is more money. It doesn't work the other way.
They're not going to pay him $2 million. They're
not.
But
if you get a 1-year deal, that you pay him more. You don't pay him less for a 1 year.
No. Well, why? No.
I think they might pay him $2 million, Mike. I think there's a chance.
They're not going to pay. They're not going to pay him $2 million.
I really think they're going to pay him $2 million.
No, the number will start with a 1 and not a 2.
How many top 6 defense in this league are making less than $2 million? Like,
at this point, Eck is a number 7 for them.
But no, he's not. Okay, he's number 7. So
he's a number 7. Now, we don't know the severity of Liljegren's injury,
right?
So we don't. So if it's something that's just keeping him out of camp and he's back for the regular season. Right now, Sandin is number 7 with Justin Hall playing in the top 6.
Right, but you don't.
I'm just waiting for the next injury because the Leafs defensemen are older anyhow. He could just wait till the next injury.
Keep waiting. You're not getting over 2.
Oh, I think. Listen, if the Leafs have one more injury, he will get 2.
He will.
No, he won't.
I'm looking at teams. I'm just going through teams now. Like, do you think he's any better than Scott Mayfield?
Yeah, Mayfield's making $1.4 million. Mayfield
is Sandin's better than Mayfield.
Offensively, yes. Defensively, not in the same stratosphere. I would take Mayfield is a top 4 defenseman and a good two-way guy. Now he's never been a scorer and he never will be. Sandin has the potential to be a 40 to 50 point defenseman, but and a power play quarterback. But right now he hasn't proven that he can stay healthy and be that.
I'm looking at $2 million defensemen around the league. Like, guys that just make $2 million, right?
Yeah, Justin Hall is a $2 million defenseman.
But he's obviously better than Justin Hall.
Well, I think he is, but the Justin Hall is in the last year of his contract, and I think that if they sign Sandin, that Justin Hall is going to be the guy they end up trading.
If you had both players as unrestricted free agents right now in front of you, who would you give $2 million to, Sandin or Justin Hall?
But Justin Hall's 30 years old and Sandin's 22. So
who would you give $2 million?
That's an unfair question. Of course,
you would give it to you, but you would know. But his age matters, and you would give it to Sandin.
Really,
Sandin is under control for 4 more years.
This is the difference between a Honda Civic and a Toyota Corolla. Like, there's, what are we talking about here?
All right, man. Sandin's stock has really dropped. Unbelievable.
Not in my eyes. I think he's
not in my eyes either, man.
Not in my eyes either. I like him as a player, but he hasn't proved anything other than he can't stay healthy. He's got to play a full season and show them what he's got. And then
he gives the minutes. He's pretty solid. Like when he does play, he plays. I mean, Randy's been hurt, but he gives them minutes.
Second power play, right?
But I'm saying he played 9 games 2 years ago and he got hurt. He played.
We got to talk about something else. Before we get on to Dallas, and I know, Mike, you got to leave pretty soon, so maybe we need to push Dallas, which is fine, because we do have to talk about the Sean Couturier situation, because that's
we'll do Dallas tomorrow.
Major importance right now, because yesterday, it comes out that Sean Couturier is injured, and again, and it's the same. At least it's not. They're not saying it's the same injury, but it looks like it's the same injury.
I mean, it's his back. We don't know if it's the exact same spot.
Last time we checked, he has how many of those?
Yeah.
1. He's got 1 back, so it's not like it's the right knee or the left knee.
They said upper body. Or do we know it's his back? Okay.
I guess upper body. I guess your waist is where the upper body, lower body.
If you have a herniated disc up here, it is upper body.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess your waist is where upper body and lower body
Right.
split, right?
That's
All
the
right, so
dividing line.
guess that's the dividing line there. So he's like,
Right at
so
the
groin is
chest.
the lower body, back is an upper body. Right about there, right? As Holmgren said one time, it's upper neck. Anyway, it's above the neck, the injury. But okay, so Couturier going down, Couturier being hurt and really being in a lot of pain is incredibly terrible news for for the Flyers. I mean,
And it's a non-contact injury.
Yeah, and just from skating, a team that doesn't need any more bad news. There's not a single player that they need more than Couturier.
Oh, absolutely. It crumbles everything that they have going on down the middle on that team because now Kevin Hayes is the number one center. In no universe is that ever true.
Right. Not to mention the fact he was probably going to be named the captain of this team. I mean, that also,
not right away.
No, but I think pretty soon. And if he's healthy, I would have imagined by game one, he would have been captain of the team. I think they would have gone through camp and named him the captain. Now everything's up in the air, and I mean, this could be it. I mean, this could be it for Couturier in some ways.
I don't think it's going to be it. Okay, here's where I'm going to draw the line.
All right.
They're not giving any updates, by the way, on Ryan Ellis, so we know he's not playing.
Yeah, he's
so
not playing. Yeah,
we push Ryan Ellis aside and we say that's its own situation. Now,
correct.
With Couturier, I think backs are tricky, and so the back is the one situation where if they do see the right doctor and they say, a couple of months off could be beneficial. And then he could get back in there. It wouldn't shock me if that's the prognosis. I'm not saying it's going to be, but it wouldn't shock me. I'm not going to all of a sudden say he's done forever. I'm not doing that.
All right, so let's say he's done for a month or two at least.
Let's say 2 months.
All right, 2 months at least. That's just still, I mean, devastating towards the Flyers.
Oh yeah, it's rough.
I mean, when you look at who they, their depth chart, it really just gets crazy quickly. As to who's going to, like you say, Kevin Hayes is going to be the top center. Torts does not want Kevin Hayes to be the top center.
He has no choice.
You got no choice, right? So I'm trying to go through. I mean, this definitely, Morgan Frost gets put up a lot higher, which, I'm fine with. And I hope that I'd like to see that. But, is that good?
I'll say it like this. If it's a herniated disc, I do think there's a way he comes back from that this year.
Okay, so he comes back this year, but does that really? I mean, if he misses, who? So basically, you have Kevin Hayes, Morgan Frost, and then what at center, right? Like who else?
Maybe Scott Lawton has to go back to center.
He's gonna go back to center because it's not like Patrick Brown is going to be
he'll be the fourth line center, so Lawton will be your third line center.
Right.
Yeah, and then you sign Antoine Roussel.
Now, Anisimov is in on
Anisimov could be the fourth line center, and then
he's in on a PTO now, and
Brown could be the third line center, and then Lawton could play wing. It's possible they do that, or Lawton could be the second line center, and they push Frost to third line center. They could do that too.
Right. That's true. It's
not good.
No, it really changes everything for this team and it just gives them. I mean, there's very little star power on this team as it is, and
I mean, getting goals is going to be tough. And listen, I know Artem Anisimov very well, but as a center, like he's a big center. He's okay, like on faceoffs. He's not like a terrific center. Like Patrick Brown's actually a decent center for a fourth line guy.
Right.
Anisimov is just like, you want him at center because he can score and he's big.
Right.
So the best case scenario for Anisimov would be third line center. And he played in the KHL last year, so we don't even know where he's at.
Yeah. I mean, he is a good two-way player. Mm-hmm. Or at least he was, He's
got a good shot, and he's got a good shot.
And he's older. But
we say the departed Mike Ogello at the end of the show because he always does that to you.
Okay, yeah, he does. I see. I didn't know that. So the departed Mike Ogello. Let's talk about him now and how ridiculous he is. All right, so why do Leaf fans and Leaf media? Correct me if I'm wrong here. There is no other media or fan base that talks down their players more when they're going into contract years than they do.
I don't know if that's coming from the team though. It just goes. It gets out there, and I don't know if that's the team doing it. But we just hear the narrative, so I can't say where it's coming from.
All right, maybe you're right, but I think it's just. I mean, like everybody's good until they're about to get a contract, and And
Yeah.
and because Sandin has been talked about as this major, like how many years do we sit here and listen to?
Oh,
Well, when Sandin comes around, or he's going to
that's
be
2 years strong that, like he's a guy that's going to be in the lineup and he's going to produce.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just think that that's all right. So let's do a little bit more about the Flyers here for a second before we go. Because this is trying to figure out where this. I mean, Farabee's hurt too.
Well, he's coming back from also neck surgery, like
Right.
Eichel. So we don't know if he'll start the season. It's just
So those are
crazy.
your top two forwards, Couturier and Farabee.
Well, if you want to say Konechny's better than Farabee, maybe you could say that, but I
I
don't.
don't want to say that because I don't believe that's true.
That's fine.
I mean, do you think that's true?
It's close, but
I mean,
no.
they are similar type players, but I think Farabee has more has a kind of a better head on his shoulders.
Yeah, that's definite.
And I think Konechny just rides waves of emotion. Like Konechny and Cam Atkinson are similar type players that they just ride waves of emotion.
Yeah.
And they're both talented. And Atkinson, who has an astronomical amount of power in this regime right now.
Oh, he's the number one guy right now.
He's the guy that's everyone. It's like feels like he's the guy's going to talk after every game to everybody.
He's the number one guy. You're right. That is
I mean,
definite.
he has gone from this player that was a salary dump. From remember the Columbus thing was 2 salary problems for each other.
Yeah.
And he to a player. I mean, he did a good, relatively good year last year, I guess.
He had a very good year. He did.
He's a fun, exciting player. But he's like a 20 goal scorer at the end of the day. Like that's what he is,
Yeah, I mean, he could get 25.
He got 23 last year in 73 games, and that was a good year for him.
Yeah.
So, I think that's.
And you figure if Hayes is healthy, he could get 50 points.
Yeah. Right. I mean, there's no real. There's just
The problem is who is going to get like 70 points?
Well, who are the snipers on this team, Russ? That's what I'm asking you. Like, I want to sniper.
Look, Frost has the ability to be a future sniper, but hasn't put it together. This is going to be his chance to put it together.
Yeah, and I like that. I mean, I like Frost getting a lot of time, but Frost, at least in what we've seen so far from him, is a much better player when he's playing with other skilled players.
Yes.
So the issue is, where are those other skilled players to play with?
Well,
I mean, I would play him with Atkinson, to be honest, at this point.
They're not going to do that, though. They're probably going to put Hayes with Atkinson. So Frost is going to end up having to play with Konechny and
JVR. Yeah, or something like that,
Yeah, JVR is the guy who, should be like the scoring leader on this club.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can't.
Yeah, I mean, he is the most natural goal scorer they have.
Yes.
For sure. A guy that they weren't willing to give up for a first round. They weren't willing to trade with a first round draft pick to get.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, they tried to trade him so many times, and he is their best hope as far as scoring goes. I mean, I do think that it'll be interesting to see like Wade Allison. We'll get to the Flyers, of course, but trying to look at
Allison's hard to predict if he could even can he even play 30 games with the Flyers? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of excitement to him. People are going to like him. He's going to be a player that is going to be a fan favorite, as will Delorier, I believe. But
yeah, Delorier will be a fan favorite. But I mean, how many points is he really putting up?
Yeah, not many. But he'll definitely be. But that line now with that at least the cap friendly fourth line of them is McEwen, Patrick, and Delorier.
Yeah, but I think it's going to change now. I think
McEwen, Brown, Delorier. Sorry,
yeah, Brown. I think based on the quote yesterday from Antoine Roussel saying that they felt like there was an opening there, and they were, his team or somebody was saying that they think he could make that team.
Right.
I have a strange feeling he might make the team over Zach McEwen now.
Yeah. Which I'm actually.
You kind of wonder, why did they sign Zach McEwen?
But I'm actually fine with. But then you do wonder why they signed Zach McEwen. I'm fine with them making the team over McEwen, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. That's the tough part about that.
But now I could see that happening.
Yeah. And the weird thing about this is like a team like this bad should have players that are a lot younger on it than this team has.
Well, that's the thing. So that's the other problem with the setup here.
Yeah.
What should be happening instead of having Roussel coming in, Anisimov is fine. You're down a center, bring in a center. But like someone like Noah Cates should have a nice fine line of being able to make this team. And if you don't want him to be a center, fine, you put him on the wing. He can play both. But it seems like that may not happen because, like, if McEwen makes the team and Roussel were to make the team, then a guy like Noah Cates isn't going to have a spot.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I mean, he'll do great in Lehigh, but I think he showed enough at the end of last year that he can develop at the NHL level. He's not a young guy.
He did too. I mean, Lehigh will be a lot more interesting to watch.
Lehigh will be a lot better, but the problem is, and there's one more issue here. So yesterday, Ian LePerrier told Jason Martinez that when AV was around, AV wanted the same system employed with the Phantoms as well as the big club, which most teams do. Like that's
standard operating.
But apparently Torts said, no, there's a similar structure, and then go do, what's natural with these players. And I don't know how to take that because
I guess he doesn't want the Phantom players to get hurt. That's how I would take that.
Is that how you take it? Okay.
Because, if you're blocking all these shots, you're going to need the Phantom players to come up.
Maybe. So he said the structure is going to be there, but utilize their youth and everything else. And I'm thinking, or it's one of these other things, Zach. You know what else it could be? Because really Torts has never taken great interest in like the minor league teams of the teams because he's always looking at his guys and not who can come up, right? And I think he probably looks at it like, you could play my system, but it's not me. And so it's not going to be the same. So you just do what you do, make sure they play well away from the puck, and then I'll take care of the rest. It's almost like he wants to make himself indispensable that way.
That's a good point.
I think that's the way I'm taking it.
That is a really interesting point. Yeah, I mean, as of right now,
Owen Tippett can't play center, no.
Owen Tippett can't play center. No, we have a lot. I mean, there's Owen
Tippett's got an opportunity to score here, but he's got to actually score.
Yeah. I mean, this has always been a team that has lacked 26 through 29-year-old players. I've always said that. And
that's the last thing in this.
Yeah.
The last thing in this is when Chuck was going on his tour last summer.
Yeah.
Well, not last summer, last trading deadline, saying, well, after the Owen Tippett deal, we're really trying to get these 25-year-old or under players, right?
Yeah.
And they did that for like 2 months, and then Torts comes in, and now you got Roussel, who's 32.
Yeah.
You got Anisimov, who's 34, I think. It's like, it seems like that's not really in play anymore.
It's not. And
it should be based on what you said, like, hey, you're not sure if you're good anyhow.
Right.
So at least if you're young and there's a chance. But again, there's another factor here. The last factor is Torts is going to put guys in there that he wants to go to war with, even if he's not winning games. He's going to want to feel like they're playing hard and winning the war for him, even if they're not winning all the games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's what he's going to do. And that may mean that there's not many young players that get a chance.
Yeah. I mean, I do agree.
Which is the opposite of what it should be, but
the weird thing is if they don't give young players a chance, they don't have the 25 to 30-year-olds, at least up front. Like the 25 to 29-year-olds. Like they have on defense, they've got Provorov's 25, D'Angelo's 26, Sandheim's 26, Ristolainen's 27. Those are prime guys in the prime.
Yes.
They're right there, right? So that's really solid. But up front, you've got like the Farabys and Konechny's that are like, Konechny's 25. But beyond that, you don't have anybody in your top 12 that's between 26 and 30, except, you have Lawton and Couturier, but Couturier's hurt, right? So
well, they're going to put Tippett on the first or second line because they're going to give him every opportunity.
But he's younger, so like he's like 23. So that middle, to me, the prime years of like 26 to 29, or 26 to even 30, is the best teams have players who are right in there.
A lot of those guys,
and they don't have a lot of them at all. And with this team, they have a lot of 32-year-olds, a lot of 33-year-olds. 31-year-olds.
If Torts plays his way, guys will over marinate in Lehigh, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it does slow down the NHL development when, again, you may not be playing exactly the same system, and you've got a coach that you don't know if all these players are going to work out with this coach. It would be good if they could get tryouts with him.
No, yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it's definitely we'll get to the Flyers preview for sure because I've been thinking about the best cases and worst case scenario. And it's really tricky because they are all over the map, and this has got to be one of the most unpredictable teams that I've seen in Philadelphia, or in general. And
Anywhere.
And then you throw Couturier out. You throw Couturier out of it, and you start to think to yourself, well, then maybe they are.
We didn't even start camp yet, and they're losing players.
And with Farabee and Couturier both not there, those are the two guys that should be leading this team. We'll see. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey, and we will talk to you all tomorrow. We might be joined by Karen tomorrow too, so we will talk to you then. She wrote a really good story on PK Subban. Definitely check that out today. See you all tomorrow. I'm ending the broadcast.